I never told my daughter about my $50,000 monthly salary, even though she always saw me living a simple life. One day, she invited me to lunch with her husband's parents, who were visiting from out of state. I decided to see how they would treat a poor person by pretending to be a broke and naive father. But the moment I stepped through the door of that cafe, everything changed. What happened that afternoon devastated my son-in-law and his family in a way they never imagined. And trust me, they deserved it. Let me explain how I got there. Let me tell you who I really am. Because my daughter, Lena, at 32 years old, never knew the truth about her father. To her, I was always just the man who left early for the office, who came back tired in the evenings, who cooked with whatever was in the fridge, just another employee, maybe a clerk, someone ordinary, nothing special. And I never corrected her. I never told her that I earned $50,000 every month, that I had been a senior executive at a global tech firm for almost 25 years, signing billion-dollar deals and making decisions that affected thousands of people. Why tell her? Money was never something I needed to hang on the wall like a trophy. I grew up in an era where dignity was carried within, where silence was worth more than hollow words. So I guarded my truth. I lived in the same modest condo for years. I used the same canvas backpack until it was worn out. I bought clothes at thrift stores, cooked at home, saved everything, invested everything, and became rich in silence. Because true power doesn't shout. True power observes. And I was observing closely when Lena called me that Thursday morning. Her voice sounded different, nervous, like when she was a kid and had done something wrong. "Dad, I need to ask you a favor. Jackson's parents are visiting from the Midwest. It's their first time here. They want to meet you. We're having lunch on Sunday at a cafe. Please come." Something in her tone made me uncomfortable. It wasn't the voice of a daughter inviting her father. It was the voice of someone asking not to be embarrassed, to fit in, to make a good impression. "Do they know anything about me?" I asked calmly. There was a silence. Then Lena stammered. "I told them you work in an office, that you live alone, that you're simple, that you don't have much." There it was, the word simple, as if my entire life could be contained in that miserable adjective, as if I were a problem she needed to apologize for. I took a deep, deep breath. "Okay, Lena, I'll be there." I hung up and looked around my living room. Old but comfortable furniture, walls without expensive artwork, a small TV, nothing that would impress anyone. And at that moment, I decided, if my daughter thought I was a poor man, if her husband's parents were coming ready to judge, then I would give them exactly what they expected to see. I would pretend to be broke, naive, and desperate, a father barely surviving. I wanted to feel firsthand how they treated someone who had nothing. I wanted to see their true faces because I suspected something. I suspected Jackson and his family were the type of people who measured others by their bank accounts, and my instinct never fails. Sunday arrived. I dressed in the worst outfit I owned, a faded blue, shapeless, wrinkled shirt, the kind they sell at a flea market, old, worn-out boots, no jewelry, not even a watch. I grabbed a tattered plastic bag, pulled my hair back into a messy knot, and looked in the mirror. I looked like a man broken by life, forgettable, perfect. I got into a bus and gave the address, an upscale cafe in the trendiest part of the town, the kind where the menu doesn't list prices, where each table setting costs more than the average person's monthly salary. As we drove, I felt something strange, a mix of anticipation and sadness. Anticipation because I knew something big was coming. Sadness because a part of me still hoped I was wrong. I hoped they would treat me well, that they would be kind, that they would look past the old clothes. But the other part, the one that had worked 35 years among corporate sharks, that part knew exactly what was waiting for me. The bus stopped near the cafe. Warm lights, a valet in a crisp uniform, elegant people entering. I paid, stepped out, took a deep breath, crossed the threshold, and there they were. Lena was standing next to a round table near the windows. She wore a light blouse, a gray skirt, and polished flats. She looked anxious. Beside her was Jackson, my son-in-law. He wore a fitted navy suit with silver accents, dress shoes, his perfectly combed hair falling over his forehead. He looked impeccable as always, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking towards the entrance with a tense, almost embarrassed expression. And then I saw them, Jackson's parents, already seated at the table, waiting like royalty on their thrones. The mother, Beatrice, wore a sleek ruby-red blouse full of beads, jewels on her neck, wrists, and fingers. Her light hair was pulled back in an elegant twist. She had that cold, calculated type of beauty that intimidates. Beside her was Harold, his husband, an immaculate brown suit, a giant watch on his wrist, a serious expression. Both looked like they had stepped out of a luxury magazine. I walked toward them slowly, with short steps, as if I were afraid. Lena saw me first, and her face changed. Her eyes widened. She looked me up and down. I noticed her swallow. "Dad, you said you'd come." Her voice sounded uncomfortable. "Of course, daughter. Here I am." I smiled timidly, the smile of a man unaccustomed to such places. Jackson greeted me with a quick pat on the back. Cold, mechanical. "Father-in-law, it's nice to see you." His eyes said the opposite. He introduced me to his parents in a strange, almost apologetic tone. "Mom, Dad, this is Lena's father." Beatrice looked up, studied me, and in that instant, I saw everything. The judgment, the disdain, the disappointment. Her eyes scanned my wrinkled shirt, my old boots, my plastic bag. She didn't say anything at first, just extended a hand. Cold, quick, and weak. A pleasure. Harold did the same. A weak handshake, a false smile, charmed. I sat down in the chair at the end of the table, the one furthest from them, as if I were a second-class guest. No one helped me pull out my chair. No one asked if I was comfortable. The server arrived with the elegant, heavy menus written in Italian. I opened mine and pretended not to understand anything. Beatrice watched me. "Do you need help with the menu?" she asked with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, please. I don't know what these words mean." My voice came out small, timid. She sighed and ordered for me. "Something simple," she said. "Something that doesn't cost too much. We don't want to overdo it." The phrase hung in the air. Harold nodded. Lena looked away. Jackson played with his napkin. No one said anything. And I just watched. Beatrice started talking first about general things, the journey from out of state, how tiring the drive was, how different everything was here. Then she subtly began to talk about money. She mentioned the resort where they were staying, $800 a night. She mentioned the premium SUV they had rented, obviously. She mentioned the boutiques they had visited. We bought a few things, nothing major, just a few $1,000s. She spoke, looking at me, expecting a reaction, expecting me to be impressed. I just nodded. "How nice," I said. "That's lovely," she continued. "You know, Victor, we've always been very careful with money. We worked hard. We invested well. Now we have properties in 3 states. Harold has major businesses, and I oversee our investments." She smiled, a smile of superiority. "And you, Vic? What exactly do you do?" Her tone was sweet, but venomous. "I work in an office," I replied, lowering my gaze. "I do a little bit of everything. Paperwork, filing, simple things." Beatrice exchanged a look with Harold. "Ah, I see. Administrative work. That's fine. It's honest. All jobs are dignified, right?" "Of course," I replied. The food arrived. Enormous plates with tiny portions, all decorated like art. Beatrice cut her salad with precision. "This costs $60, she said, "but it's worth it. Quality is worth paying for. One can't just eat anything, right?" I nodded. "Of course, you're right." Lena tried to change the subject, talking about work and some projects. Beatrice interrupted her. "Daughter, does your father live alone?" Lena nodded. "Yes, he has a small condo." Beatrice looked at me with feigned pity. "It must be difficult, isn't it, living alone at your age without much support?" And does your salary cover everything? I felt the trap closing. I barely replied, but I manage. I save where I can. I don't need much. Beatrice sighed dramatically. Oh, Victor, you are so brave. Truly, I admire men who struggle alone. Although, of course, one always wishes to give our children more, to give them a better life. But, oh well, everyone gives what they can. There was the subtle but deadly blow. She was telling me I hadn't been enough for my daughter, that I hadn't given her what she deserved, that I was a poor, insufficient father. Jackson was looking at his plate. Lena was clenching her fists under the table, and I just smiled. Yes, you're right. Everyone gives what they can. Beatrice continued. We always made sure Jackson had the best. He went to the best schools, traveled the world, learned 4 languages. Now he has an excellent job, earns very well, and when he married Lena, well, we helped them quite a bit. We gave them money for the down payment on the condo. We paid for their vacation, because that's just who we are. We believe in supporting our children. She looked at me intently. And you, Vic? Were you able to help Lena with anything when they got married? The question floated like a sharp knife. Not much, I replied. I gave them what I could. A small gift. Beatrice smiled. How sweet. Every detail counts, right? The amount doesn't matter. The intention is what's important. And right then, I felt the rage begin to stir within me. The rage wasn't explosive. It was cold, controlled, like a river under ice. I breathed slowly, kept the timid smile, and let Beatrice keep talking, because that's what people like her do. They talk, they inflate themselves, they show off. And the more they talk, the more they reveal themselves, the more they expose the emptiness inside. Beatrice took a sip of her glass of white wine, expensive one, swirling it in her hand as if she were an expert. This wine is from an exclusive region in Italy. It costs $150 a bottle, but when you know quality, you don't skimp. Do you drink wine, Vic? Only on special occasions, I replied, and usually the cheapest one. I don't understand much about these things. Beatrice smiled condescendingly. Oh, don't worry. Not everyone has a trained palate. That comes with experience, with travel, with education. Harold and I have visited vineyards in Europe, Asia, and Napa Valley. We're quite knowledgeable. Harold nodded. It's a hobby, something we enjoy. Jackson is learning too. He has good taste. He inherited it from us. He looked at Jackson with pride. Thanks, Mom. Beatrice turned to me. And you, Vic, do you have any hobbies? Anything you enjoy doing in your free time? I shrugged. I watch TV, cook, walk in the park, simple things. Beatrice and Harold exchanged another look.
A look loaded with meaning, with silent judgment. How lovely, Beatrice said. Simple things have their charm too, although of course one always aspires to more, right? To see the world, to experience new things, to grow culturally. But well, I understand not everyone has those opportunities. I nodded. You're right. Not everyone has those opportunities. The server arrived with dessert, tiny portions of something that looked like edible art. Beatrice ordered the most expensive one, $25 for a piece of pastry the size of a cookie. This is delicious, she said after the first bite. It has edible silver on top. See those little silver flakes? It's a detail only the best cafes offer. I ate my dessert. Simpler, cheaper. In silence, Beatrice continued. You know, Victor, I think it's important that we talk about something as a family now that we are all here. She looked up. Her expression changed, becoming serious, falsely paternal. Lena is our daughter-in-law, and we love her very much. Jackson loves her, and we respect that decision. But as parents, we always want the best for our son. Lena tensed up. Mom, I don't think this is the time. Beatrice raised her hand. Let me finish, daughter. This is important. She looked at me. Vic, I understand you did the best you could with Lena. I know raising her alone wasn't easy, and I truly respect you for that. But now, Lena is at another stage in her life. She is married, she has responsibilities, and well, Jackson and she deserve to have stability. Stability? I asked softly. Yes, Beatrice replied. Financial, emotional stability. We have helped a lot, and we will continue to help, but we also believe it's important that Lena doesn't have unnecessary burdens. Her tone was clear. She was calling me a burden. Me, her father-in-law. Jackson was looking at his plate as if he wanted to disappear. Lena had her jaw clenched. "Burdens?" I repeated. Beatrice sighed. "I don't want to sound harsh, Victor, but at your age, living alone with a limited salary, it's natural for Lena to worry about you, to feel that she must take care of you, and that's fine. She is a good daughter. But we don't want that worry to affect her marriage. Do you understand me?" "Perfectly," I replied. Beatrice smiled. "I'm glad you understand. That's why we wanted to talk to you. Harold and I have thought about something." She paused dramatically. "We could help you financially, give you a small monthly allowance, something that allows you to live more comfortably without Lena having to worry so much. Obviously, it would be modest. We can't work miracles, but it would be a support." I remained silent, watching her, waiting. She continued, "And in exchange, we would only ask you to respect Lena and Jackson's space, not to seek them out so much, not to pressure them, to give them the freedom to build their life together without interference. How does that sound?" There was the offer, the bribe disguised as charity. They wanted to buy me off. They wanted to pay me to disappear from my daughter's life, so I wouldn't be a nuisance, so I wouldn't embarrass their precious son with my poverty. Lena exploded. "Mom, that's enough. You don't have to—" Beatrice interrupted her. "Lena, calm down. We're talking like adults. Your father understands, right?" I picked up my napkin, calmly wiped my lips, took a sip of water, and let the silence grow. Everyone was looking at me. Beatrice with expectation, Harold with arrogance, Jackson with shame, Lena with desperation. And then I spoke. My voice came out differently. It was no longer timid. It was no longer small. It was firm, clear, and cold. "That's an interesting offer, Beatrice. Truly very generous of you." Beatrice smiled victoriously. "I'm glad you see it that way." I nodded. "But I have a few questions, just to understand clearly." Beatrice blinked. "Of course, ask whatever you like." I leaned forward slightly. "How much exactly would you consider a modest monthly allowance?" Beatrice hesitated. "Well, we were thinking about $600, maybe $800, depending." I nodded. "I see. $800 a month for me to disappear from my daughter's life." Beatrice frowned. "I wouldn't put it like that, but yes," I responded. "That is exactly how you put it." She adjusted in her chair. "Vic, I don't want you to misunderstand. We just want to help." "Of course," I said. "Help. How did you help with the condo down payment? How much was that?" Beatrice nodded proudly. $50,000. Actually, $52,500. "Ah, $52,500. How generous. And the vacation?" $20,000. Beatrice said. "It was a 2-week trip through Asia. Incredible. Unbelievable," I replied. "So you've invested about $70,000 in Lena and Jackson." Beatrice smiled. "Well, when you love your children, you don't hold back." I nodded slowly. "You're right. When you love your children, you don't hold back. But tell me something, Beatrice. All that investment, all that money, did it buy you anything?" Beatrice blinked, confused. "Like, did it buy you respect?" I continued. "Did it buy you real love? Or did it just buy obedience?" The atmosphere changed. Beatrice stopped smiling. "Excuse me?" My tone became sharper. "You've spent the entire afternoon talking about money, about how much things cost, how much you spent, how much you have, but you haven't asked even once how I am, if I'm happy, if something hurts me, if I need company. You have only calculated my worth, and apparently I'm worth $800 a month." Beatrice paled. "I didn't." "Yes," I interrupted her. "Yes, you did. Since I arrived, you've been measuring my value with your wallet. And do you know what I discovered, Beatrice? I discovered that the people who only talk about money are the ones who least understand their true value." Harold intervened. "I think you are misinterpreting my wife's intentions." I looked at him directly.
"And what are her intentions? To treat me with pity? To humiliate me throughout lunch? To offer me alms so I'd vanish? Harold opened his mouth but said nothing. Lena was pale. "Dad, please." I looked at her. "No, Lena, please don't. I'm done being quiet." I placed the napkin on the table. I leaned back in my chair. There was no more timidity in my posture, no more shrinking. I looked Beatrice directly in the eyes. She held my gaze for a second, then quickly looked away, uncomfortable. Something had changed, and she felt it. Everyone felt it. "Beatrice, you said something very interesting a moment ago. You said you admire men who struggle alone, who are brave." Beatrice nodded slowly. "Yes, I did." "Then let me ask you something. Have you ever struggled alone? Have you ever worked without your husband backing you? Have you ever built something with your own two hands without your family's money?" Beatrice stammered. "I have my own achievements." "Like what?" I asked with genuine curiosity. "Tell me." Beatrice adjusted her hair. "I manage our investments. I oversee properties. I make important decisions in our businesses." I nodded. "Businesses your husband built? Properties you bought together? Investments made with the money he generated? Or am I wrong?" Harold intervened, annoyed. "That's not fair. My wife works just as hard as I do." "Of course," I replied calmly. "I don't doubt she works, but there is a difference between managing money that already exists and creating it from scratch, between overseeing an empire you inherited and building it brick by brick, don't you think?" Beatrice pressed her lips together. "I don't know where you are going with this, Victor." "Let me explain," I replied. 35 years ago, I was 28 years old. I was a clerk in a small company. I earned minimum wage. I lived in a rented room. I ate the cheapest food I could find. And I was alone. Completely alone. Lena stared at me. I had never told her this in such detail. I continued. "One day, I got someone pregnant. The mother disappeared. My family turned their backs on me. I had to decide whether to keep going or give up. I chose to keep going. I worked until the last day before Lena was born. I went back to work 2 weeks after she arrived. A neighbor took care of her during the day. I worked 12 hours a day." I paused and drank some water. No one spoke. "I didn't stay a clerk. I studied at night. I took courses. I learned Spanish at the public library. I learned accounting, finance, administration. I became an expert in things no one taught me. All on my own, all while raising a child alone, all while paying rent, food, medicine, and clothes." Beatrice was staring at her plate. Her arrogance was starting to crumble. "And you know what happened, Beatrice? I climbed up, little by little, from clerk to assistant, from assistant to coordinator, from coordinator to manager, from manager to director. It took me 25 years of non-stop work, of sacrifices you can't even imagine. But I did it. And do you know how much I earn now?" I asked. Beatrice shook her head. $50,000 a month. The silence was absolute, as if someone had hit a pause button on the universe. Lena dropped her fork. Jackson's eyes went wide. Harold frowned in disbelief, and Beatrice froze, her mouth slightly open. $50,000, I repeated, every month for almost 25 years. That's almost $15 million in gross income over my career, not counting investments, not counting bonuses, not counting company stock. Beatrice blinked several times. "No, I don't understand. You earn $50,000 a month?" "That's right," I replied calmly. "I am the regional director of operations for a global tech firm. I oversee 5 regions. I manage budgets of hundreds of millions of dollars. I make decisions that affect more than 10,000 employees. I sign contracts that you couldn't read without lawyers, and I do it every day." Lena was pale. "Dad, why did you never tell me?" I looked at her tenderly. "Because you didn't need to know, daughter. Because I wanted you to grow up valuing effort, not money. Because money corrupts, and I wasn't going to let it corrupt you." "But then," Jackson whispered, "why do you live in that small condo? Why do you wear simple clothes? Why don't you drive a luxury car?" I smiled. "Because I don't need to impress anyone. Because true wealth isn't shown off. Because I learned that the more you have, the less you need to prove it." I looked at Beatrice.
That's why I came dressed like this today. That's why I pretended to be poor. That's why I acted like a broke and naive man. I wanted to see how you would treat me if you thought I had nothing. I wanted to see your true colors. And boy, did I see them, Beatrice. I saw them perfectly. Beatrice was red with shame, rage, and humiliation. This is ridiculous. If you earned so much money, we would know. Lena would know. Why would she believe you are poor? Because I let her, I replied. Because I never talked about my job. Because I live simply. Because the money I earn, I invest. I save. I multiply. I don't spend it on flashy jewelry or showing off in expensive cafes. Harold cleared his throat. Even so, this doesn't change the fact that you were rude, that you misinterpreted our intentions. Really? I looked at him fixedly. I misinterpreted when you said I was a burden to Lena? I misinterpreted when you offered to pay me $800 to disappear from her life? I misinterpreted every condescending comment about my clothes, my job, my life? Harold didn't answer. Neither did Beatrice. I stood up. Everyone looked at me. Let me tell you something that clearly no one has ever told you. Money does not buy class. It does not buy real education. It does not buy empathy. You have money, perhaps a lot, but you don't have an ounce of what truly matters.
Beatrice stood up, furious. And you do? You who lied, who deceived us, who made us look like fools? I didn't make you look like fools, I replied coldly. You took care of that all on your own. I just gave you the opportunity to show who you are, and you did it magnificently. Jackson had tears in his eyes. Father-in-law, I didn't know. I know, I interrupted him. You didn't know, but your parents knew exactly what they were doing. They knew they were humiliating me, and they enjoyed it until they discovered that the poor man they scorned has more money than they do, and now they don't know what to do with that information. Beatrice trembled. You have no right. I have every right, I replied, because I am your daughter-in-law's father, because I deserve respect, not because of my money, not because of my job, but because I am a human being, something you forgot throughout this entire lunch. Lena stood up. Dad, please, let's go. I looked at her. Not yet, daughter. I'm not finished yet. I looked at Beatrice one last time. You offered to help me with $800 a month. Let me make you a counteroffer. I will give you $2 million right now if you can prove to me that you ever treated someone kindly who didn't have money. Beatrice opened her mouth, closed it, and said nothing. Exactly, I replied. You can't, because to you, people are only worth what they have in the bank, and that is the difference between you and me. I built wealth, you just spend it. I earned respect, you buy it. I have dignity, you have bank accounts. I picked up my old plastic bag. I pulled out a black platinum credit card. I dropped it on the table in front of Beatrice. This is my corporate card. Unlimited limit. Pay for the entire lunch with a generous tip. Consider it a gift from a broke and naive father. Beatrice looked at the card as if it were a poisonous snake, black, shiny, with my name engraved in silver letters, Victor Hayes, Regional Director. Her hand trembled slightly when she picked it up. She turned it over, observed it, then looked at me. Her eyes no longer held that superior shine. Now there was something different, something I never thought I'd see in her. Fear. I don't need your money, she said, her voice broken. I know, I replied, but I didn't need your pity either, and yet you offered it to me throughout the entire lunch, so take it as a gesture of courtesy or good manners, something you clearly didn't learn despite all your travels through Asia. Harold gently hit the table. Enough. This is out of control. You are disrespecting us. Respect? I repeated. How interesting that you use that word now. Where was your respect when your wife asked if my salary was enough to live on? Where was it when she suggested I was a burden to my daughter? Where was it when she offered to buy me off so I'd disappear? Harold clenched his jaw. Beatrice just wanted to help.
I corrected her. Beatrice wanted to control. She wanted to ensure that the poor father wouldn't ruin her son's perfect image. She wanted to eliminate the weak link in the chain. The problem is, she chose the wrong link. I looked at Jackson. His head was bowed, his hands in his lap trembling. "Jackson," I said softly. He looked up. Tears were streaming down his cheeks. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know that my parents—" "Don't finish that sentence," I interrupted him. "Because you did know. Maybe you didn't know about my money, but you knew how your parents are. You know how they treat people they consider inferior, and you did nothing to stop them." Jackson sobbed. "I wanted to say something, but they're my parents." "I know," I replied, "and Lena is my daughter, and yet I let her make her own decisions. I let her choose her life, her husband, her path, because that is how you love, with freedom, not with control, not with money, not with manipulation." Lena came closer to me. "Dad, forgive me. Please forgive me for never asking, for assuming, for thinking you were—" Her voice cracked. I hugged her. "You don't have to apologize, daughter. I did what I did for a reason. I wanted you to be independent, to value the right things, not to depend on me financially, to build your own life. But you made me feel like I had to protect you," Lena said, "that I had to worry about you, that you were fragile." "I know," I replied, "and it wasn't wrong that you thought that, because that's how you learn to care, to worry about others, to be empathetic. Those are lessons money can't buy." Lena hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Beatrice was still standing, rigid, watching the scene with a mixture of confusion and contained rage. "This doesn't change anything," she finally said. "You lied. You deceived us. You came here with hidden intentions. You acted in bad faith." "That's true," I nodded. "I acted. I pretended to be something I'm not, exactly what you do every day." "What is that supposed to mean?" Harold asked. "It means that you hide behind your money, behind your jewels, behind your trips, behind everything you can buy, but inside you are empty. You don't have deep conversations. You don't have real interests. You have nothing to offer beyond a bank account." Beatrice gave a dry, bitter laugh. "Coming from someone who lied all afternoon, that's hypocrisy." "Perhaps," I replied, "but my lie exposed the truth, your truth, and now you can't hide. Now you know that I saw you, that I felt every comment, that I stored every insult disguised as advice, and that I will never forget it." The server timidly approached. "Excuse me, would you like anything else?" Harold shook his head abruptly. "Just the check." The server nodded and disappeared. Beatrice sat back down, defeated. Her posture was no longer elegant. It was the posture of someone who had just lost something important, and it wasn't money, it was power. "Vic," she said, in a softer, less aggressive voice.
I don't want this to ruin the relationship between our families. Lena and Jackson love each other. They have a life together. We can't let this—" I interrupted her. "Let this what? Let this ruin your plans? Let this expose what you really think? It's too late for that, Beatrice. The damage is done. But we can fix it," she insisted. "We can start over." "No," I cut her off firmly. "We can't, because now I know who you are and you know who I am, and that truth cannot be erased with empty apologies or fake smiles. You treated me like trash, and you did it with pleasure because you thought you could." Harold cleared his throat. "You were the one who came here lying. You provoked this situation." "You're right," I nodded. "I provoked this because I needed to know. I needed to confirm what I already suspected, that you are not good people, that your money doesn't make you better, that you were exactly the kind of people who despise others for not having the same things." Beatrice wiped away a tear. "We are not bad people." "Maybe not," I replied, "but you are definitely not good. And there is a huge difference between those two things." The server returned with the check and left it in the center of the table. No one touched it. Beatrice looked at my black card, still in her hands, then looked at me. "I'm not going to use your card," she said. "We will pay our own bill, as we always do." "Perfect," I replied. "Then keep that card, as a souvenir, as a reminder that not everything is as it seems, that the man you scorned all afternoon has more than you will ever have. And I'm not just talking about money."
Beatrice put the card down on the table. I don't want it. I don't want your moral lecture either. I pushed it back toward her. Keep it anyway, because something tells me you'll need it. Someday you'll run into someone like me, someone who pretends to be less than they are, and you'll make the same mistake again, because people like you never learn. Harold took out his wallet, pulled out several credit cards, all golden, all shiny. He chose one and put it on the check. The server took it and left. No one spoke during those waiting minutes. The silence was thick, uncomfortable, and heavy. Jackson cried quietly. Lena held my hand. Beatrice stared at the wall. Harold checked his phone to avoid eye contact. The server returned. "Sir, your card was declined." Harold looked up abruptly. "How was it declined?" The server repeated. "Declined. Do you have another form of payment?" Harold turned red. "That's impossible. That card has an extremely high limit. It must be a system error." The server shrugged. "I can try again if you like." Harold handed him another card. The server left. Beatrice nervously looked at her husband. "What happened?" "I don't know," Harold replied, irritated. "It must be a bank error. Maybe they froze the account for security. It happens sometimes when you travel." I nodded with feigned understanding. "Of course, those things happen. How inconvenient." The server returned again. "I'm sorry, sir. This one was also declined." Harold stood up. "This is ridiculous. I'm calling the bank right now." He stormed out of the cafe. Beatrice remained seated, ashamed, humiliated. "This has never happened to us. Never." "What terrible timing," I commented without emotion. Lena looked at the check. "Dad, I can—" "No," I interrupted her. "You are not paying for anything." I took out my wallet, a simple old leather wallet. I pulled out another card. This one was not black. It was transparent, made of heavy metal. A card that less than 1% of people in the world possess. I put it on the table in front of Beatrice. She looked at it. Her eyes widened. She recognized what it was. "That's a Centurion card." "That's right," I replied. "American Express exclusive invitation. Minimum annual spending requirement of $250,000. $5,000 annual fee just for having it, and benefits you can never imagine." Beatrice said nothing. The server took the card carefully, as if it were something sacred. He returned in less than 2 minutes. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Everything is settled. Would you like the receipt?" "It's not necessary," I replied. The server nodded and left. Beatrice continued looking at the space where the card had been. I stood up, took my old wallet, my plastic bag, and looked at Beatrice one last time. "The lunch was delicious. Thank you for the recommendation of the place, and thank you for showing me exactly who you are. You saved me a lot of time, a lot of energy, and many future disappointments." Beatrice finally looked up. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from contained rage. "This doesn't end here," she said, her voice trembling. "You can't just humiliate us and walk out as if nothing happened. Jackson is our son. Lena is our daughter-in-law. We will still be family. You will have to see us." "You're right," I smiled. "I will have to see you at birthdays, holidays, and family gatherings. But now I will see you differently. I will no longer wonder what you think of me. I already know. And you will know that I know, and that truth you will live with. Every time you see me, every time you pretend to be kind, you will remember this afternoon." Harold returned to the table. His phone was in his hand. His face was pale. "There's a problem with the accounts, a temporary block for security. It will be resolved tomorrow." He looked at the table. "Did they pay already?" "Yes," Beatrice replied without looking at him. "He paid?" Harold looked at me. His pride was shattered. "Thank you," he murmured. It was barely audible. "You're welcome," I replied. "That's what family is for, isn't it? To help each other, especially when someone needs a small allowance, say 800 or, in this case, 600, which is what this lunch cost." Harold closed his eyes. Beatrice clenched her fists in her lap. Lena approached.
"Dad, let's go, please. It's enough." I looked at her. "You're right. It is enough." I turned to Jackson. He was still crying quietly. "Jackson," I said softly. He lifted his head. "You are not to blame for how your parents are. No one chooses their family, but you do choose how you act, how you treat others, how you will raise your own children someday." Jackson nodded through his tears. "I'm sorry," he whispered again. "Don't
apologize again, I told him. Just learn. Learn that money does not define people, that humility is not weakness, that respecting others costs nothing, and that if you ever have children, teach them to see the heart of people, not their bank account. Jackson sobbed harder. Lena hugged him. Beatrice looked away. Harold checked his phone again, avoiding all eye contact. I headed for the exit. I took a few steps, then stopped and turned around one last time. Beatrice, one more thing." She looked at me. "Do you remember when you said you speak 4 languages?" Beatrice frowned. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Just curious," I replied. "In which of those 4 languages did you learn to be kind? Because clearly it wasn't in any of them." Beatrice opened her mouth, but no words came out. "Exactly," I said. "You can speak 1,000 different languages and still not say anything worth listening to." I walked out of the cafe. Lena walked beside me. The fresh day air hit my face. I breathed deeply. I felt as if a huge weight had been lifted off me. Not a physical weight, but an emotional one. The weight of pretending, of tolerating, of keeping silent. Lena took my arm. "Dad, are you okay?" "Perfectly fine," I replied. "Better than ever." "And you, Lena?" Lena sighed. "I don't know. I'm processing everything. I can't believe you never told me about your job, about your money, about everything you accomplished." I stopped and looked her in the eyes. "Does it bother you?" She quickly shook her head. "No, of course not. I'm proud, incredibly proud. But I also feel foolish, blind." "You are not foolish," I told her. "You simply saw what I wanted you to see, and I did it on purpose because I needed you to grow up without depending on me, without feeling you had an economic safety net waiting for you. I needed you to fight, to work, to value everything you achieved on your own." Lena nodded. "I understand. But now I also understand why you never complained, why you never asked for help, why you always seemed so calm, because you needed nothing." I smiled. "I needed many things, daughter. Only none of them could be bought with money. I needed to see you grow up, see you become a good woman, see you make the right decisions. And I achieved that." "Even marrying Jackson?" she asked in a weak voice. "Even marrying Jackson," I replied. "He is not his parents. He can learn. He can change. But that depends on him and on you, on how you build your relationship, on what values you choose to follow." Lena remained silent, processing, thinking. A taxi stopped in front of us. I had called for a rideshare as we left. I opened the door. Lena stopped me. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you do it? Why did you come pretending to be poor? Why didn't you just tell them the truth from the beginning?" I closed the taxi door. I turned to her. "Because I needed to know, daughter. I needed to confirm if my suspicions were correct, if Jackson's family was really as I imagined. And unfortunately, I was right." Lena lowered her gaze. "I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize for them," I told her, "but you do have to decide what kind of wife you want to be, what kind of mother you want to be someday." "What do you mean?" she asked. "I mean that you have just seen 2 very different ways of handling money and power, your in-laws' way and mine. They use it to control, to humiliate, to feel superior. I use it to have freedom, to help without showing off, to live peacefully. You decide which path to follow." Lena slowly nodded. "I understand." I opened the taxi door again and got in. I rolled down the window. Lena came closer. "Dad, one last question. Tell me, are you ever going to forgive Beatrice and Harold?" I thought about it for a moment. "Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting," I replied, "nor does it mean allowing it to happen again. I might forgive them someday when I see a real change, when they start seeing people as people, not as numbers. But until then, I will simply be polite, distant, and extremely cautious." "And me?" Lena asked. "Do you forgive me for not asking, for assuming, for allowing this lunch to happen?" I looked at her tenderly. "Daughter, there is nothing to forgive. You did what you thought was right. You wanted your family to meet. That is beautiful. What happened afterward was not your fault. It was theirs. And a little bit mine too, because I decided to play their game." Lena smiled weakly. "You won." "I won," I nodded. "But I don't feel victorious. I feel tired and sad, because I confirmed something I didn't want to confirm, that some people will never change, that some families are broken even if they have money, that there are voids no bank account can fill." The taxi driver cleared his throat. "Sir, should we go?" "Yes," I replied. "Give me 1 second." I looked at Lena one last time. Go to Jackson. Talk to him. Listen to him. Support him. But also be honest. Tell him how you felt today. Tell him what you expect from his family and from him. Because if you don't establish boundaries now, this will happen again and again. "I will," Lena promised. "I love you, Dad, and I mean it more than ever, because now I know who you really are, and you are incredible." I smiled. "I love you too, daughter."
I always have. I always will. No matter how much money I have or don't have. Because love has no price. And that is a lesson Beatrice and Harold will never learn. Lena stepped away from the taxi. I gave a signal to the driver. "Can we go?" The taxi started. I looked out the window. I saw Lena walking back toward the cafe, her shoulders slumped, thoughtful. She was probably going back to find Jackson, to face his in-laws, to have difficult conversations. And I felt proud, because that meant she was maturing, she was learning, she was choosing to be better than the example she had just witnessed. The taxi sped through the town's bustling streets. I closed my eyes and thought about everything that had happened, every word, every look, every moment of tension. And I wondered if I had done the right thing, if I had been too harsh, too cruel, too vengeful. But then I remembered every disguised insult, every condescending comment, every look of disdain, and I knew that no, I hadn't been too anything. I had simply been honest. Finally, the taxi was crossing the empty streets of the day. The lights of the buildings flashed quickly past the window. I opened my old plastic bag and took out my phone. A simple phone. Nothing ostentatious, nothing attention-grabbing. I had 3 unread messages. One from my assistant asking about a Tuesday meeting, another from a colleague congratulating me on a closed deal, and one from an unknown number. I opened the unknown message. It was from Jackson. "Father-in-law, please forgive me. I didn't know my parents would be like that. I am ashamed. I need to talk to you, please." I looked at the message for a long time. I thought about responding. Then I decided not to. No, he still needed time. He needed it too. Words rushed out of guilt rarely mean anything real. True changes take time, reflection, and consistent action. I put the phone aside. The taxi driver looked at me through the rearview mirror. "Excuse me for asking, sir. Is everything okay?" I looked up at him. "Yes, everything is fine." "Why?" "Well, you got in very quietly, and normally the people who come out of that cafe are happy, talking about how delicious the lunch was. You came out as if you had been in a war." I smiled slightly. "Something like that. Was it that obvious?" He shrugged. "I've been driving a cab for 20 years. I've seen it all. Drunk people, people fighting, couples breaking up, families arguing. And you have that look of someone who just said something they'd been keeping inside for years." "You're perceptive," I told him. "It's my job," he replied. "Plus, it helps pass the time. Do you want to talk about it? You don't have to, but sometimes it helps to tell things to a stranger, someone who isn't going to judge you, someone who doesn't know you." I thought about his offer. It was tempting, but I shook my head. "Thank you, but I think I've talked enough for today." He nodded. "I understand, but let me tell you something. Whatever happened in there, you did the right thing. I know because you are calm. You are not crying.
You are not screaming, you are processing. And that means you spoke your truth, and the truth always brings peace, even if it hurts. His words surprised me. He was an older man, maybe 60 years old, with gray hair and working hands. A simple man like the one I pretended to be. "Do you believe in the truth?" I asked him. "I believe in honesty," he replied. "Not always the absolute truth, because the truth changes depending on who tells it, but honesty doesn't. Honesty is saying things the way you feel them, without masks, without lies, even if it hurts, even if it makes things awkward, even if it costs you something." I nodded. "You're right. My wife always told me I was too direct," he continued, "that I said things without a filter, that I hurt people without meaning to. And maybe she was right. But she also told me that she never doubted me, because she knew that what came out of my mouth was real, not calculated, not manipulated, just real." I smiled. "She sounds like a good woman." "She was," he replied. "She died 5 years ago." "I'm sorry," I said sincerely. He shook his head. "Don't be sorry. We had 40 years together. 40 years of honesty, of fights, of reconciliations, of laughs, of tears. And not once did I go to sleep wondering what she really thought, because she always said it, and so did I. That is a gift." "You're right," I murmured. "It is a gift." The taxi stopped at a red light. "Can I ask you something personal?" the taxi driver asked. "Go ahead." "Are you rich?" The question took me by surprise, not because of the question itself, but because of the direct way he asked it. "Why do you ask that?" "Because I picked you up from an $800 per person cafe, but you dress like someone who shops at discount stores. You have an old bag, worn-out boots, but you talk like an executive, you move like someone with power, and you paid for my cab with crisp new bills that you pulled out of a wallet that looks 20 years old." "Observant," I commented. "Part of the job," he repeated. "Then am I?" "It depends on how you define rich," I replied. "If you were talking about money, yes, I have enough, more than enough. If you were talking about happiness, I also have peace, health, a daughter I love, work I am passionate about. That makes me rich in many ways." He nodded, satisfied. I knew there was something. Truly rich people don't need to prove it. The light changed to green. The taxi moved forward. "And what happened in that cafe?" he asked, "if it's not too indiscreet." "I pretended to be poor," I replied, "to see how they would treat me." He let out a loud laugh. "Seriously? That is brilliant. And how did they treat you?" "Like trash," I said, without emotion. "They humiliated me. They offered me alms. They treated me as if I were invisible, less than human." He stopped laughing. "I'm sorry. I must have hurt a little," I admitted. "But it also confirmed something for me. That I was right about those people. That they weren't worth my time. That they didn't deserve my respect. And now they know it. Now they know who I am, and they will have to live with that shame." The taxi driver whistled softly. "That must have been epic." "It was," I smiled. "It definitely was." We arrived at my building, an older middle-class building. Nothing luxurious, nothing impressive, but comfortable. Safe home. The taxi driver parked and looked at the building. "You live here?" "I live here," I confirmed. He shook his head, astonished. "You truly are special. Most people with money move to expensive areas, to buildings with doormen, private security, gyms, and pools. You live like a normal person." "I am a normal person," I replied. "I just have more money than most. But that doesn't make me different. It doesn't make me better. Money is just a tool, not an identity." He smiled. "I wish more people thought that way. The world would be better." I took out my wallet. "How much is it?" $30, he replied. I gave him a $100 bill. "Keep the change, sir." "This is too much." "It's not," I said. "You listened to me. You gave me perspective. You reminded me that there are still good people. That is worth more than $70. He took the bill carefully. "Thank you. Truly, thank you." "Thank you," I replied, "and take care of that honesty. It's rare, it's valuable, Don't lose it." "I won't," he promised. I got out of the taxi, closed the door. He rolled down the window. "Sir, one last thing. Tell me whatever happened today, don't regret it. Don't feel sorry, because people like you, the people who speak the truth, even if it hurts, are the ones who change the world, little by little, one conversation at a time." I smiled. "Thank you. I will remember that." The taxi drove away. I stood in front of my building, looking up at my fifth-floor window. The light was off, dark, silent, waiting for me. I entered the building and walked up the stairs. I never used the elevator. I preferred to walk to stay active. I reached my door. I took out my keys, the same keys I had had for 15 years. I opened the door. The condo was cold, empty. I turned on the light. Everything was in its place. The simple living room, the small kitchen, the dining room with mismatched chairs, the walls without expensive artwork, and I felt at peace, because this place was mine, truly mine, not bought to impress, not decorated to show off, simply a space where I could be myself, without masks, without pretensions. I took off my old boots, took off the wrinkled blue shirt, and put on comfortable clothes and old, soft, familiar pajamas. I made myself some tea, sat on the sofa, and turned on the television. News. Nothing interesting. I turned it off. I sat in silence, thinking, processing, feeling, and for the first time in many years, I felt completely free. Free from pretending, free from silence, free from tolerating, free from being less than I was. Because that afternoon, I didn't just expose Beatrice and Harold, I also liberated myself from expectations, from judgment, from the need to hide who I was. And that was invaluable, more than any amount in my bank account. My phone vibrated. Another message, this time from Lena. "Dad, did you get home safely?" I smiled. I quickly replied, "Yes, daughter. I arrived perfectly fine. I'm home resting." Her reply was immediate. "I love you. Thank you for everything, for being who you are, for teaching me, for never giving up." I closed my eyes. I felt a tear roll down my cheek. Not from sadness, from relief, from love, from gratitude. I replied, "I love you too. Always." I put the phone aside. I drank my tea. I looked around my simple condo, my sanctuary, my truth. And I smiled. Because at the end of the day, it didn't matter how much money I had. It didn't matter how high I had climbed in my career. The only thing that mattered was this moment, this peace, this honesty with myself. I woke up early on Monday, as always. 35 years of working had trained me to rise with the sun. Even though it was my day off, my body no longer knew how to sleep late. I prepared strong coffee, black. I sat by the window with a hot mug in my hands. I watched the town wake up, the vendors opening their stalls, people walking somewhere. Life continued as always, indifferent to personal dramas. My phone started ringing. It was a familiar number. "Lena," I answered. "Good morning, daughter." Her voice sounded tired. "Dad, I need to talk to you." "Did something happen?" "A lot," she replied. "Yesterday, Jackson and I talked for hours. His parents were there too. It was intense." I took a sip of coffee. "Tell me." Lena sighed deeply. "After you left, I went back to the cafe. Beatrice and Harold were still there, waiting for their cards to work. It was humiliating for them. Jackson was devastated, crying, and I was furious, more furious than I have been in years. I waited in silence. She continued, "I told them everything I felt during that lunch. I told them I was ashamed of them, that they treated my father like trash, that their behavior was unacceptable, that I wouldn't tolerate it ever again." "And what did they say?" I asked. At first, Beatrice tried to defend herself. She said they just wanted to protect Jackson, that they wanted to make sure I had a stable family, that they didn't have bad intentions. I squeezed the mug in my hands.
Typical. But then Jackson spoke, Lena continued. He told his parents that they were wrong, that they had been cruel, that he had seen every comment, every look, every disguised insult, and that he was ashamed to be their son at that moment. Her voice cracked. Dad, I had never seen Jackson confront his parents like that. I smiled slightly. That's good. It means he's waking up. Beatrice got hysterical, Lena said. She started yelling that Jackson was ungrateful, that they had sacrificed everything for him, that they had given him the best life, that he had no right to judge them. Harold backed her up. He said we were being manipulated by you, that you had planned everything to make them look bad. I let out a dry laugh. Of course, it's my fault. That's what made them angriest, Lena said. I told them they were right, that you did plan everything, but that they fell into the trap because that's really how they are, because they really treat people they consider inferior badly, that you just gave them the opportunity to show themselves and they did it perfectly. Well said, I murmured. Thanks, I learned it from you. There was a silence. Then Lena continued. Dad, I need you to know something. Yesterday, I made a decision. Jackson and I are going to set boundaries with his parents. We are not going to cut off the relationship, but we are going to set clear rules. No comments about money, no comparisons, no attempts to control our lives. And if they can't respect that, then they will have to accept the consequences. And did they accept? I asked. No, she replied. They left furious. They said we were ungrateful, that we would regret it someday, that when we needed help, they wouldn't be there. Harold said he was going to reconsider his will. Beatrice said Jackson had chosen the wrong family. I shook my head. Emotional blackmail, the last resort of people without arguments. Exactly, Lena said, but it didn't work. Jackson stood firm. I did too. They left the cafe without saying goodbye, without looking back. And honestly, Dad, I felt relief, as if a huge weight had been lifted off me. That's because it was, I told her. You lifted the weight of living under their expectations, under their control. Now you can build your life however you want, not as they dictate. Thank you, Dad, Lena said, her voice emotional. Thank you for doing what you did yesterday. I know it was difficult. I know it was awkward, but we needed to see it. I needed to see who they really were, and Jackson needed to see that there was another way to live, a more honest, more authentic way. You are welcome, daughter. I only did what I believed was right. There is something else, Lena said. Jackson wants to come see you. He wants to apologize in person. He wants to talk to you, not as a son-in-law trying to look good, but as a man trying to learn. What do you think? I thought for a moment. Tell him he can come, but not today. Give him a few days to process, to think carefully about what he wants to say. Rushed apologies are hollow. The ones that take time are real. I'll tell him, Lena promised. Dad, one more question. How are you doing after all of this? How do you feel? I looked out the window. The sun was fully up now. The day had officially begun. I'm well, I replied. Better than well. I'm at peace because I finally said everything I needed to say, and I don't regret anything. I'm glad to hear that, Lena said. I love you. I love you too. Rest. I'll see you soon. I hung up the phone, finished my coffee, and stood up. I decided to do something I hadn't done in a long time. Go for a walk aimlessly, without rushing, just walking and thinking. I dressed in comfortable clothes, old jeans, a simple top, worn sneakers. I grabbed my keys and went out. The streets were full of life. Families strolling, children running, couples holding hands, vendors offering food. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. I walked through the nearby park and sat on a bench watching people pass by, and I realized something. Most of these people probably didn't have much money. They lived with just enough, worked hard, and struggled every day, but they smiled, hugged each other, and enjoyed the moment. And then I thought about Beatrice and Harold, with all their money, their properties, their trips, their jewels. Were they really happy? Or were they just busy trying to prove something, trying to fill a void with material things, trying to buy value, respect, and love?
things that could never be bought. An older woman sat down next to me. "Good morning," she said, with a smile. "Good morning," I replied. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" she commented. "Very beautiful," I nodded. She took bread from her bag and started feeding the pigeons. "I come here every Monday," she said. "It's my moment of peace before the week gets crazy again." "I understand that," I said. I needed a moment of peace, too. "Difficult week?" she asked. "Something like that," I replied. "More like a difficult afternoon." She nodded wisely. "Sometimes a single afternoon can change everything." "You're right," I murmured. "Can I give you some unsolicited advice?" "Go ahead," I smiled. She pointed to the pigeons. "Look at those birds. Some are big, some are small. Some have pretty feathers, others have scruffy feathers. But they all eat from the same bread. They all share the same space. None of them thinks they are better than the others." "That's a nice metaphor," I said. "It's not a metaphor," she replied. "It's the truth. Humans are the only animals that invent false hierarchies, that measure value with external things. Pigeons don't do that. They just live. They just are. We should learn from them." I smiled broadly. "You are completely right."
I should give classes to some people I know. She laughed. "Oh, child, at my age, I don't give classes. I just observe and share what I see. But most people don't listen. They are too busy running, buying, competing, forgetting that in the end, we all end up in the same place, with or without money, with or without jewels, with or without properties. We all end up turning into dust." "How philosophical," I commented. "How realistic," she corrected. "I have lived 82 years. I have seen it all. And I can tell you something. The most miserable people I met were the ones who had the most, because it was never enough. They always wanted more. They always competed. They always compared. And they died without having truly lived, without having truly loved, without having truly been." Her words resonated deep within me, as if she had touched upon something I already knew but hadn't articulated. "Thank you," I told her, "for sharing that." She patted my hand. "You're welcome, child. And remember, it doesn't matter how much you have or don't have. What matters is how you treat others, because that is what remains. That is what transcends. That is the only inheritance worth having." She slowly stood up, put her empty bag away, and waved goodbye. "Have a beautiful Monday." "You too," I replied. I watched her walk away, a small woman, hunched with age, wearing old clothes and worn shoes, but with more wisdom than all the Beatrices and Harolds in the world combined. And I felt grateful. Grateful for that encounter, for that reminder, for that truth and powerful. I stayed on the bench for a while longer, thinking, feeling, processing everything that had happened, and I came to a conclusion. I didn't regret anything. No word, no action, because everything I did yesterday was necessary. It was liberating. It was honest. And honesty, even when it hurts, is always the right path. 4 days passed before Jackson knocked on my door. 4 days of silence, processing, and reflection. When I heard the bell ring that Friday afternoon, I knew who it was. I opened the door. There he was, without makeup, his hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, dressed in jeans and a plain top, no jewelry, no dress shoes. He looked vulnerable, real, different from the man I had seen in the cafe. "Father-in-law," he said in a low voice, "may I come in?" I stepped aside. "Go ahead." He entered slowly, looking around, observing my condo with new eyes, the simple living room, the old furniture, the walls without expensive decor. He sat on the sofa when I pointed to it. I sat across from him, waiting, without pressuring, letting him find his words. "I don't know where to start," he finally said. "Start where you feel ready," I replied. He took a deep breath. "I came to apologize, but not just with words. I came to explain why my parents are the way they are, and why I stayed silent for so long." I listened in silence. Jackson continued, his voice trembling. "My parents grew up poor in a small town out of state, without electricity, without running water, working in the fields since they were children. They saw their own parents die young due to lack of medicine, lack of money. They went hungry, they suffered, and they promised themselves they would never be poor again. They would do whatever it took to get out of there." I nodded. "I understand. That explains a lot."
They worked like animals, Jackson continued. They saved every penny. They immigrated looking for opportunities. Harold built his business from scratch, literally from scratch. And when they started earning money, they never forgot what it was like not to have it. That's why they talk about it so much. That's why they measure everything by that standard. Because to them, money means survival. It means security. It means never going back to that dark place. It's understandable, I said. Trauma does strange things to people. Jackson nodded. But that doesn't excuse how they treated you. I know. And I want you to know that I saw everything, every comment, every look, every insult. And I stayed silent because I've been doing that my whole life. Staying silent, accepting, letting them control everything. Because they taught me that contradicting them was a betrayal. It was ungrateful. And now, I asked? Now I understand I was wrong, he replied. That love is not control. That family is not blind obedience. That I can love them and still not agree with them. Lena helped me see it. You helped me see it. That afternoon at the cafe, when you revealed yourself, when you told them everything, it was as if a blindfold had been taken off my eyes. Jackson wiped his tears. I always knew something was wrong. I always felt that the way they measured people was incorrect, but I convinced myself that it was me, that I was too sensitive, that I didn't understand the world. But you showed me that no, there is another way to live, where money does not define your worth, where humility is strength, where authenticity is wealth. I took a sip of water. Jackson, I didn't come that afternoon to change you. I came to protect myself, to know who I was dealing with. I know, he replied, and I thank you for that, because your brutal honesty saved me. It saved me from becoming my father, from perpetuating that cycle, from teaching my future children that people are valued by what they have. I don't want that. I don't want to be that. And your parents? I asked. How are they after all this? Jackson sighed, furious, hurt, humiliated. Beatrice hasn't spoken to me in 4 days. Harold sent me a message saying I had disappointed him, that I had chosen strangers over my own blood, that I would regret it someday. He paused. And you know what's strange? I don't feel bad. I feel free. That's good, I said. It means you made the right decision. Jackson nodded. Lena and I set boundaries.
We told them they can be a part of our lives, but only if they respect us, if they respect our decisions, if they stop trying to control us with money or emotional blackmail. And if they can't do that, then they will have to accept a distant relationship. How did they take that? I asked. Badly, Jackson replied. Beatrice said we were ungrateful, that they had sacrificed everything for me. Harold threatened to disinherit me, to cut off all financial aid, as if that were the only thing we cared about, as if our love for them depended on their money. And that's when I realized they really believe that. They really think their value is in their wallet. It's sad, I commented. Very sad, Jackson agreed. Because they have so much and enjoy nothing. They just accumulate, compete, show off. But they never stop to ask themselves if they are happy, if they have peace, if they have real connections with people. They just count their properties and feel victorious, while inside they're empty. He was silent for a moment. Then he looked at me directly. Father-in-law, I want to ask you for something. Tell me. I want to learn from you. I want you to teach me how to live with dignity, how to be rich without needing to prove it, how to have peace in the midst of chaos, how to be strong without being cruel. Because that afternoon, I saw something in you that I never saw in my parents. I saw class. I saw real power. I saw a man who didn't need to shout to be heard. I smiled tenderly. Jackson, I can't teach you that. That is learned by living, by making mistakes, by falling, by getting up. The only thing I can do is share my experience and tell you that the path is not easy. You will face criticism, judgment, people who won't understand why you live differently. But if you stay true to yourself, if you live according to your values, you will find peace. And that peace is worth more than any amount of money. I want to try,
Jackson said. I want to be better, not just for Lena, but for me, because I deserve to live without that constant pressure, without that need to impress, without that fear of not being enough. Then do it, I told him, but don't do it all at once. Do it little by little. Start by questioning your habits, your purchases, your motivations. Ask yourself before every decision, is this for me or for others? Does this bring me peace or just appearance? Jackson nodded, taking mental notes. And my parents, do you think they will ever change? I looked at him with honesty. I don't know. Change requires you to recognize a problem, and they don't believe they have one. They believe the world is wrong, that people are ungrateful, that they are victims. Until they see that, change is not possible. But you can change. You can break the cycle. I will, he promised, with Lena's help, and I hope with your guidance too. You don't need my guidance, I replied. You just need your internal compass, that voice that tells you what is right and what is wrong, that voice you silenced for years to please your parents. Listen to it, trust it, follow it. Jackson wiped away the last tears. Thank you, father-in-law, for everything, for your patience, for your honesty, for not giving up on us. There is nothing to thank me for, I said. Just promise me one thing. When you have children, teach them the value of people, not the price. Teach them empathy, humility, and kindness, things that don't cost money but are worth everything. I promise, Jackson said firmly. I promise with all my heart. We hugged. A real, warm, honest hug. No acting, no masks, just two men connecting as human beings. Jackson left an hour later, lighter, freer, with hope in his eyes. I closed the door behind him. I sat back down on my sofa, looked around my simple condo, and smiled. Because this was enough. This was everything. An honest space, an authentic life, real relationships. I didn't need more. I never needed more. My phone rang. It was a message from Lena. Dad, Jackson told me about his visit. Thank you for welcoming him, for listening to him, for giving him a chance. I love you more than words can express. I replied simply, I love you too, daughter. Always. I put the phone aside. I sat by the window. I watched the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, and in that moment I understood something fundamental. Real wealth is not about how much you have, it's about how much you enjoy what you have, how much peace you feel, how many genuine people surround you, how many times you can look in the mirror and be proud of who you are. Beatrice and Harold had millions, but I had this tranquility, this authenticity, this pure love for my daughter, and that made me infinitely richer than them. I never pretended to be poor again. I didn't need to. I had learned what I needed to learn. I had seen what I needed to see, and I had liberated what I needed to liberate. Beatrice and Harold continued to be who they were, rich in money, poor in spirit. But that was no longer my problem. I had spoken my truth, I had set my boundaries, I had protected my peace. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't have to pretend who I was. I was simply Victor, father, executive, man, survivor, fighter, rich in every sense that truly mattered. And that was more than enough. It was everything. Did you like the story? Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe this channel.